It really does take time. And for the people who are looking for an overnight solution or few month solution, it's not going to happen. And it's really like asking yourself, are you in this for the long run?
This is Beyond Influential, with Brittany Crystal. Join Brittany as she chats with today's thought leaders about the power of influence, how it's developed, and how they get us to consume both on and offline. Here's your host, Brittany Crystal.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Beyond Influential. I'm here today with Gwen Lane, who is the founder of The LA Girl, an online lifestyle and travel community for millennial women in Los Angeles. She's also the founder of Spark Society, where she's building a community of entrepreneurial millennial women to network, mastermind, and have fun. She also has a handmade jewelry line called Gwen Lane, where 10% of the proceeds go to charity, and she is a very busy and talented woman. Thank you so much, Gwen, for joining me today.
Thanks, Brittany, so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So can you give me a little bit of background about yourself and kind of your trajectory to even start the LA Girl?
I know, it's insane, right? When I'm listening to that, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I do all those things. So I grew up in LA. I have been living here in LA since I actually was 5. I was born in the Philippines and moved over here. Went to school here and pretty much grew up here most of my life, and then went to college up north to UC Santa Cruz, go banana slugs. I've always been kind of a nature lover and a hippie at heart, so that was the right school for me. They kind of just needed a change from LA. After that, I moved back down to LA and started my career in advertising. Worked for an agency for the Sony Pictures theatrical account, working in movie advertising, and I really wanted to get into the marketing part of business. So I moved into marketing after that. So about 12 plus years of that. In between, had some teaching jobs, did some freelance jobs. Teaching involved teaching Microsoft Excel and doing corporate training, teaching Photoshop and Illustrator, and so I've always loved teaching. And I didn't know how all of this was going to come together. It did take more than a decade to all come together. And 3.5 years ago, while I was at my corporate job working for gifts.com, so that was marketing in the e-commerce space, which I also loved, the e-commerce space. I was selling on eBay since I was 16, Pokemon cards, and making money on the side. I always had a side hustle. It's kind of funny how I've always been an entrepreneur. So I started the LA Girl because it was something that I always loved writing, and it was something that I knew a lot about. And so I knew kind of the places that I would recommend to people in LA, and I wanted to talk to women like me. And so millennial women were kind of naturally came to be my demo. And then about a year in, my audience started growing, and I think Instagram helped propel that. And then I was like, oh my gosh, maybe this isn't just a writing hobby. Maybe this could be an actual business, because I was seeing the monetization of websites and blogs and Instagram. And 2.5 years later, I was able to leave my corporate job, which I was then working at Awesomeness TV in entertainment marketing. And I realized that community building is definitely something that I love doing, and providing a platform for women in LA was something that I knew that I wanted to continue to do full time.
So I want to take it back to even college. What were you studying in college, and what was the dream at that point? Like, what even drew you to marketing advertising?
So my major was business management economics. I loved math, and I loved science, and I loved economics, and I always loved learning. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do at the time. I was thinking about getting a classics minor. So I was very all over the place. I didn't know. I was exactly where a lot of people are now, where they don't know what the hell they want to do. I had a lot of GE credits towards that major, so I think that's why I even chose that. So it was by default, but I'm sure, as you know, everything happens for a reason, even if you don't know why at that moment. And when I got out of college, it was a connection. I just got a job from someone who worked in PR, actually, in the finance department. Huh. I know. So I didn't like advertising was out of choice. The finance job was just a connection. And it was someone I knew and said, hey, like, you're lucky. You get a job right out of college and you don't have to worry about it. And so I took it. But I immediately knew that it was not for me.
For you.
So I don't even put that in my resume, but it's kind of a cool thing to start when I say, what was your first job? I was like, actually was in finance. And I know that's where the money is, but that wasn't where my passion is. And clearly that wasn't the right route for me.
I definitely relate to that. So then how did you end up kind of going through advertising and then to Awesomeness TV? Well, I guess you went through your e-com job and then Awesomeness TV. Even just thinking about it, it's interesting because I can even see the different things that you could pick up in terms of like e-com skills that apply now. Awesomeness TV being YouTube and influencers applying now. So yeah, what kind of stuff did you take away from each of these jobs?
Well, obviously, like you said, there was all these things contributed to what I do now, and I didn't know it at the time. And it was just opportunities just kept coming up, and I do have to admit that I do need to be mentally stimulated pretty often or all the time, so that a year into a job, if I'm not growing, I know that it's time to move on. And I feel like that's my advice for people who are like stuck. If you're stuck, you have the choice to move. And I'm a big believer in the whole saying of if you're not growing, you're dying. So I was very much into like, okay, I'm not learning anything, time to move on. So that's why, you know, some people don't think that skipping to the next job is a good idea after a year or two. But if you already know, one, you don't want to be there, then why waste your time? And two, it's usually just fear and like laziness, right? Because you don't want to go through the process of looking for another job. And also, like, there's someone else that could learn from that position and you're taking that away from them. And then there's another opportunity that's perfect for you, that's waiting for you, but you're not like opening the door for it.
I totally relate to all of that. I was working in Hollywood after law school. When I knew law wasn't for me, it's that kind of fail fast and then reiterate.
Yes.
And so when I knew something wasn't for me, it was like I put in the appropriate amount of time and then I'd try to get the hell out and figure out what really worked.
Right.
So just like that. So when did you first start putting content online?
This was in 2014. It was September 2014 was when I started LA Girl, and it was basically a trial and error. I would see people doing yoga poses online, and I'm a big yogi. I've been practicing since I was 18, so 15 years ago. And so I was like, okay, I go on hikes and then with my mom, and I would have her take photos of me. So my mom was my first Instagram husband, and she would just take photos of me. And it would, you know, people would like them. And then I would go to restaurants that I would eat at and do food porn. And we all know food is super popular on Instagram. So I would just post like my life and the things that I was doing. And then I related that to the blog, whether that was a list of, you know, my favorite sushi places or my favorite hikes. And I would tie that into Instagram. And because I worked in marketing and content marketing, I was fortunate enough to know how to put together a content strategy and be more mindful about it, not just like post whatever I could. So I started treating it like a magazine, like a publication, and having an editorial calendar. And it helped keep me on track because I was working a full-time job.
So what platforms did you start with? Did you start with the Instagram and then create the blog? Or were you like, oh, I have this idea, I'm going to launch all of these platforms at once?
I actually started on Twitter.
Well, Twitter was kind of first on that.
Yes, exactly. I just love Twitter just because it's like short and sweet. You don't have to worry about writing a whole blog post. And then people were a lot more social on Twitter, I feel like. People would just
back then
talk
they were
to everybody. And I could, you know, like tweet at the mayor and tweet at like random people in LA and they would respond. And it was just like a really cool community. And I really loved that. And I kind of missed that about Twitter. And then from Twitter, I knew that I had to link them back over to my O&O, my owned and operated kind of site. So that was the blog for me. So I started my WordPress blog. I got my domain, and then people are always like, how did you get the LA Girl? How is that not taken? It wasn't in 2014. So it was just a luck thing.
So we're going to talk about this in a second. So for context, I spoke at Gwen's event at Spark Society a few days ago, which was amazing. She put on a great event, and not because I was there.
Yes, it was.
And we talked about Well, my panel talks specifically about branding and marketing from agency side and just from the not pure influencer side. What made you choose to go with the LA girl and not your personal name instead?
Well, I thought about this a lot, and some people actually think that the LA girl is me, and it's actually not. And when people say Gwen, the LA girl, I actually correct them. And when I introduce myself either on the blog or on camera, I say Gwen, founder of the LA girl, because the publication and the platform is for every LA girl and for the LA girl. And that isn't me. And that's everyone in LA that relates to the issues that I'm going through, whether that's how am I going to afford a house in LA? How do I save money and do free things with my family? Where are the happy hour spots where I can get $1 oysters? And really cool, relatable stuff like that. And so when I write and when I provide content, I'm thinking of the LA girl as my demo and not me, because I know that, I don't think that it's about me. It's more of a community platform.
So, I mean, that has like long-term vision to it,
yes.
What you're thinking. Did you go in thinking, I want to build a media company? Was that even the intention? I mean, that's what it is now, but...
Yeah, I know. It's funny because sometimes people put me in the blogger category, which I kind of am, but, in the beginning, it started out just as a blog, but now it is a media company. And now the community is the thing that kind of sets me apart, because people were asking me, and I was asking myself, how am I different from the media companies in LA, the other LA blogs out there? And there's actually not that many if you think about all the LA media publications. And the difference is that there's actually a community of LA girls that want to do this stuff together, because LA is such a huge place. It's hard to make friends. It's hard to meet girls. The competition here
really
is a thing. Everyone talks about it, especially like if you're an actress and you're competing with 50 other girls every day to get a part. How do you find friends to just go to brunch with? And I realized that the community was what fueled my passion for this platform, and not necessarily my list of things to do. These are great and everything, but it's what makes it a million times better than everything else is, hey, there's a group of 10 girls who are going to go to brunch at one of these places this weekend. And we have events every month, so it's now evolved into an events company.
So did you know that this white space existed because you were looking for it yourself?
No, it just popped up because when I started talking to girls, with the things to do, I started realizing with the comments and everything, it's like, we should go do that. We should go do that. And people would tag, a friend or their boyfriend. But it's like, what if you don't have friends in LA? What if you just moved here?
What if they don't feel like it?
Yes. Well, that's the thing here too. It's like, I have friends that won't go hiking with me because they're not hiking friends. They love the gym and I don't love the gym. So I'm like, okay, who are my hiking friends? And luckily I was able to make a ton of hiking friends in LA, but what about beginner hikers? Or, if you only want to go to the ones in the West Side. And so there's like a lot of different subgroups within the subgroups, and my group has been such an amazing group of girls. Like, seriously, I feel like I have attracted some amazing energy to the group, and everyone has been able to make friends, and they make friends in their own neighborhood. They go to brunch together, and I feel like I'm really creating connections, and that's not something that a traditional media company does.
Not to talk about numbers, but you have a pretty sizable community. Do you mind just giving some rough numbers about how big your community is?
Sure. Well, as in base of like followers, readers. So followers were in total of almost 200,000 in LA. That's the total community. I get over 250,000 unique visits a month to the blog. And that doesn't include, video reach and stuff like that. One of my most popular videos are easy hikes in LA, had over 800,000 views.
Wow.
So the numbers are growing, and this doesn't include like ad spend and advertising costs, which I do factor in there, because for me it's so easy for me to use Facebook as a way to generate more viewers, because Facebook knows what millennial girl lives in LA, and I've been able to create ad campaigns where I can attract people for under 2 cents. So it's kind of like...
Sorry, as someone who's run paid ads, I'm incredibly impressed.
Right? So it's kind of like free people. at that point. So it's like, why not add money to my video? And for another girl to watch it, it costs like 1 cent or under a cent. So it's like, they get attracted to the videos. They join the LA Girl Society. They join some of my weekly giveaways, read my blog, connect with other women. There's just so much.
I have so many questions because it's like, how long did you even take to get? I mean, I think I just need to even back up. Okay, so you start putting out content. How has your ideal audience changed, if at all? How has the content changed, if at all?
So the audience was always going to be in the 20s through 40s. I found that there are a lot of older women in LA that have kind of joined in, and they're young at heart, and they're either their kids are out of the house, and so they're now looking at their new identity. So I do have a lot of older women that are millennials at heart, and I totally welcome them. Sometimes they're in the group and they're like, am I too old? I'm 58. And I'm like, no, if you can hang and you like the people, like, I don't think age really matters. I think that's just more of for me to talk to brands about who my audience is. But in reality, we welcome everybody.
And
well,
58,
women.
And 58 in LA looks 35.
It's different.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, they still go to spin class, so, you know.
So when you started putting out content, how did you get your content seen for the first however many months before you actually started seeing traction, and how did the growth trajectory work?
Well, no one was reading it in the beginning. That's just the truth, right? I've talked to a lot of people about that. And it's like talking to yourself. And it's just how it's going to be for the first couple months. And then it wasn't until Twitter and Instagram started growing. And that took about 6 months to a year. 6 months to a year. And then it wasn't really being seen consistently until maybe 1.5 to 2 years. So it really does take time. And for the people who are looking for an overnight solution or few month solution, it's not going to happen. And it's really like asking yourself, are you in this for the long run? And when people ask me, are you going to be doing this for how long? I was like, yes. One, there's a million people, there are millions of ladies in LA that haven't reached yet. And 2, there are other cities in the world that also need my help.
So you do want, the goal is later to expand to other cities?
Yes, it's just definitely not in the 1-year plan just because there's just so many things for the LA girl. But I have friends in other cities that are seeing what I'm doing on Facebook, and they're like, why aren't you here yet? This problem exists in all the major cities because it's just really hard. It's like you get into the grind and the routine of work, and it's like, do you go up to people at the gym and say, hey, can we hang out? It's awkward now, right? It's especially with the evolution of dating apps. And, you know, I know that, you know, I think Bumble has that Bumble BFF because they're seeing that that's where people are and people still need friends.
So did you give yourself a time frame where you're like, listen, even if nobody's reading this, I'm going to be working on this, 1, because I enjoy it, and 2, I'm going to give it at least, 1.5 years? Because I'm assuming you're still at your job at this point when you're starting writing and putting out this content.
Yes. I knew that this was what I wanted to be doing in the long term. I didn't know how long it was going to take, but I knew that I was going to work at it, and this was going to be my full-time thing, whether it was going to take 3 years or 5 years or 7 years. I'm pretty fast. And like I said, with moving jobs and jumping, I knew that it was probably going to be a 2 to 3 year thing. And I was very fortunate that after 2.5 years, I was able to take that leap.
Was there a specific moment when your readership blew up, or was it just slow and steady over time?
I think it's slow and steady over time. There wasn't no major like event thing or a retweet of 1 million things. No, it wasn't like that. I feel like it's just like every day, and going to events and meeting new people, like that was a ripple effect. And now I have girlfriends that would go into Sephora, and this girl who's helping her says she wants to start a beauty blog, and my friend talks to her about me, and she's like, oh my God, I follow Gwen Lane. I'm like, what? She knows my name? And it's still unreal to me that, there's like 7 degrees of connection that for some reason they're starting to learn about me and my business.
So when did you realize it was a business?
I realized it was a business when brands started coming to me and offering me money for posts. So one of my biggest first deals was with Propel Water, owned by Gatorade, and they wanted me to do this 4-month content partnership around this fitness conference, and they had offered me $5,000, and I was like, what?
Wow.
I was like, yes, yes, yes.
So out the gate, you weren't pitching brands. They started it.
Yes, they came to me, and I was very fortunate on that. Even before that, I was getting invites because as LA, I guess, influencer blogger, I would get invites. I got on the PR list for some reason. I'm sure they're researching for bloggers to come to their events. So I'd get on media invites, I'd get restaurant invites, but those were for trade. So you'd get a free meal to cover. And so at first I was like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. But then as a marketer and a business person, I'm like, okay, this is great, but how am I going to live on free meal? I mean, I guess I could live on free meals, but you know what I mean? I can't pay rent on this. I can't pay my car payment on this. And so that's when it started switching gears, when I would get free stuff and I would get invites, but I'm like, okay, where's the real money? And how can I get to the point where I can sustain myself with this?
So when did that happen? Did you start outreaching then the other way?
Actually, no. I'm very fortunate that probably 90% of my brand sponsorships and partnerships have all been inbound. And it's something that I teach a lot to my students now that I'm teaching other people how to do this, is that you have to make sure your brand is on point, your content's on point, and you'll attract those people. And I mean, I believe in sales, and I believe in, if you have time for that. But as a solopreneur, if you don't have an assistant, if you don't have a sales team, if you're going to spend your time pitching, it's going to take a lot of the time from creating your content and creating value for your audience.
For people who do want to pitch, do you have any tips for them?
Yes. So you should definitely make sure that you have a media kit available, because that's like the first thing. A media kit is just like a resume, kind of one sheet that has all your stats of, who your demo is, how many people you have visiting your blog or website per month, how many page views you get, how many followers you have, and also other brands that you've worked with. It's a really good credibility thing. And even if you only worked with them for free, or they only gave you samples of products, those are all examples of partnerships. So in the beginning, when, I hadn't gotten paid yet, I would list the 5 brands that invited me. So whether that was, a hotel or a restaurant, those are still examples of my previous work. And so having a media kit shows that you're professional, that you've worked with brands before. And then you could just send them that and send them links to your site and to your social channels, and also give them the value of what are you going to give them and why they should work with you.
Did you even know how to start a business? I think that's something that a lot of people, people are like, oh, I'm going to be a famous influencer, blogger, I'm putting out all this content. But I think there's a lot of things that go on to actually build a business. Did you have any clue?
Well, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. So growing up, I worked in my family business. So that really helped a lot. I learned how to do inventory really young. I would sell at my mom's boutique. I would, I even worked in the farm. My parents owned a farm in the Philippines, and they would make me work to see the value of hard work. And I would harvest rice in the summer. And be in the fields and be in like the 100-degree heat harvesting rice, and like I hated them at that point and be like, why do I have to do this in the summer? But it really they were all lessons, and I still carry that value now. It's like everything's a lesson, and I knew what it was like to do wholesale. So my first business was selling airheads in the school bus. And so I saw that the student store was selling them for, I think, $1 a pop. And so I found them at Costco for a box, borrowed the capital from my parents, and then sold them for 50 cents to
50?
Undercut.
I figured it would be 75.
I undercut it was kind of a under the table operation. So I didn't want to get caught. So I learned the value of wholesale retail in that point. So there were a lot of cool things that I learned early on that I really think helped, in addition to my career in advertising and marketing.
So what's been the hardest part building this business?
Oh, the hardest part is Definitely staying disciplined and staying motivated, because as much as, I have lots of passion, energy is something that we don't have, I feel, unlimited amounts of at a high at every hour of every day. That's just not realistic. I know that I'm a morning person, and I do really well when I start with yoga, meditation, and journaling in the morning. I've listened to podcasts and read books all the time to kind of get me in the mood. I listen to a lot of Gary Vee. I listen to a lot of Tony Robbins. All the great ones. They inspire me a lot, and kind of be like, that's me on a smaller scale. And, if I could inspire people and give people these opportunities, and that is motivation. But again, there are days that I can't do it. There are days when I'm burnt out, and there are days that it's not working. But I think that on the days that I am on and on fire, those make up for the days where I don't get any work done.
So we're going to get into the other things that you do soon, but
Sure.
Just in terms of time management, how were you managing your time at the beginning versus how are you managing your time now?
So time blocking is something that I'm definitely a big proponent of, just because you can see how much time you actually have available in the day. So when I was working my 9-to-5 job, I'm sure you know that before 9 o'clock, what are you doing? And so I would wake up at 4:30, 5 a.m. in the morning, get my work done for the business, and then go into work. I made sure that I lived close to work, so I wouldn't be doing a 2-hour commute every day, because that's 2 hours that you could be working on your business. That's over 10 hours in 1 week. So it really, when I decided that this was going to be a business, I made it a priority and shifted my lifestyle so that I made sure that I made time for the business as if it was a second job. Because there are people here nowadays that have 2 jobs. There are people that drive Uber at night and drive Uber on the weekends to make ends meet. And it's like, what if they can do it, why can't you? And if you think about, I always think of Gary Vee talking about House of Cards, and then people saying they don't have time to build a business, yet they have time to watch 10, 15 episodes in a weekend.
Yeah, and I always see that meme floating around, like, you have as many hours in the day as
Episodes in a weekend.
Yeah, and
Exactly. And yeah, Beyonce has a team, but for the people who are doing the solo and in the beginning, it's like you have to just ask yourself, like, what's important, and are you going to be in the same place you are now versus a year from now?
So when did you actually make it a full-time thing? When were you like, okay, I'm good leaving my job for this?
So it was about 2 years after starting the LA Girl.
Just for context, we're sitting on San Vicente Boulevard outside in Brentwood. So all of that noise is natural car LA noise.
Yes, it's ambient noise.
Yeah.
So 2 years into it, I was starting to get lots of really amazing opportunities, and a lot of them included travel. And I'm a big traveler. I'm sure if you've checked out my blog, you've seen that I've done a couple amazing trips just this past year. And I realized that being at a full-time job, I was not going to be able to do those things. And there were a lot of things that happened during the day. And there were a lot of things, around 4 o'clock. And I started to feel like I wasn't being a great employee. And I felt bad because I really loved my boss, who was super supportive and knew I had a side hustle and knew that, I was building a business on the side. And so I started feeling like I wasn't giving 100% at my job anymore, and I wasn't giving 100% in my business. And so it was like a choice, similar to the calling of the hero's journey on, hey, there's something calling. Will you pick up and answer, and will you step up to the plate? And of course, there were a lot of fears going into it. Fears of money, fears of insurance, fears of benefits, and
I think
401k.
The benefits is the biggest
That's
concern.
the biggest one. That's the biggest one. And I was even thinking no, I'll just try a couple more years, save up, just try and do it. But I could get to the point where I was starting to resent my job, even though I didn't hate my job. I was just starting to resent being there because I knew I wanted to be somewhere else. And so it was my husband actually who was very supportive and said, you don't want to get to the point where you're miserable and you've wasted so much energy of being miserable. Don't let it get to that point. And so I think it was when I got offered a trip to go to Soul Camp
Ooh.
which is a week-long kind of retreat for adults, a sleepaway camp where you do lots of yoga, meditation, and soul searching. And I said, okay, that's it. That was like my sign from the universe. And I said 2 weeks from that date was my 2 weeks notice date.
So you love travel. Did you ever do the digital nomad thing? Did you guys kind of move around or not so much?
No, not so much. There was a time after I worked in advertising that I moved to Europe for a year.
Oh, where?
I lived in Paris for 6 months, and I moved around Germany for another couple months, went to Greece, Italy, Spain, even made my way down to Cairo, Egypt. So.
How was that? We're going to talk after the podcast about all the things she just said.
It was, the most amazing experience of my life. It was, that experience that people get on like, oh my God, I threw myself into corporate right after college, and is this going to be my life for the next 60 years? I didn't want to do that. So I said, I'm going to leave my job now and then kind of figure out what I want to do. And through there, I was able to that's when I discovered my love for making jewelry. And I was able to sell jewelry on my travels to help support my travels. And
that's awesome.
That's how I was able to stay there. I also tutored English and did a bunch of under-the-table jobs because I was on a tourist visa. But it was a great experience. I met my best friend there. I started an Etsy shop online.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, you kept busy.
Yes, I did.
So we'll get to the jewelry in a bit. But as far as I want to go back and maybe talk a little bit more about some tactical questions.
Sure.
So I want to talk about collaborations. How important are collaborations to you and the LA Girl and for the future of influencers and blogging right now?
I think they're so important because famous saying, no man is an island, is so true. And if you think about all the influencers, all the big YouTubers, they do collabs because each person has an audience. So if you can tap into each other's audience, why not? I think that in the beginning, I was doing a lot of them for free just because I needed to create the content. Now that I have been able to charge for them and people have offered payment, I'm more selective on it. And also the time, does it make sense for my brand? Now I could be more picky, and also I know my values and stick to them pretty strongly. So I know the things that I'm not going to promote and not going to do.
So is that the case with deciding brand deals now? You have such a clear vision of what you will and will not do that you get to decide who you work with.
Yes, definitely. So there are I do a lot more no's now than yeses. I only will promote products that I do believe in just because I feel like I've spent so many years building an audience, and part of building an audience is getting them to trust you.
Yep.
And if all I'm going to do is blow that on a deal on like some lipstick that I don't even care about or trust or don't use, and someone's like, oh my God, Gwen recommended that and it sucked. I don't want that to be the case just for a product or just for a deal.
So what kind of brands do you like to work with?
So I really like brands that promote the things that are important to me, including health and wellness, fitness. I love different kinds of food. I think that there could be a healthy balance between healthy and non-healthy food because I do love desserts and I love coffee. So it really depends on the person, on what advice they're going to use. But I do love brands that support my vision and are the ones that I actually use myself.
Have you ever promoted something you've regretted promoting?
Good question. Maybe there's ones that I have, but I think that we all make mistakes and we learn from them.
So what's been the hardest part about community building?
What's really hard is in the beginning, of course, I wanted to make sure everybody was happy and having fun. But we all know that that's never true for everybody, and that, I'm not usually a people pleaser. I'm very direct, but with my community in the beginning, of course, like my first meetup, I wanted to make sure everyone was happy and everyone was having a good time. The first hike we did was the Hollywood sign hike, and 300 people RSVP'd on Facebook. But Facebook events, people just put going, but they don't go. So I was like, probably 50 people will go at most, and 100 people showed up, which was a lot for that trail. And then it was a beginner hike. It wasn't like easy hike, but I said beginner hike. And so of course people were like, that was not a beginner hike. But like everybody has a different level.
That's true.
Like I cannot generalize your level of fitness. And I gave them, how many miles it was. I gave them the elevation. And of course, there's someone always going to complain. And I've just realized, not realized, but I had to come clean to myself and realize that it's never going to be at the point where everyone's going to be 100% happy. If the overall vibe and energy is great and I helped, some people feel welcomed and belong to a group, then great. But there's always going to be that 1 to 10 people that are like, well, I didn't get enough free stuff, or, like you didn't talk to me enough. And I'm
so
like,
crazy.
I can't individually talk to everyone, give you an hour of my time. It's just not possible.
How do you feel about things like pods or loop giveaways?
So I think pods are a great thing to do. I launched an Instagram course last year, which I'll be relaunching. And I do think that pods are great. It's basically a group of friends that are, it's like reminding everyone to engage in your posts, and I would engage in them anyway. The pods are just a great system so that everyone does it. Loop giveaways, I have not participated in one of those big ones where they have iPhones or iPads or anything. I have heard from friends that they gain a lot of followers, but they lose a lot just because they are only following them for the prize. I've done giveaways on my own, but usually it's a brand partnership.
And those do well for you?
Those do well for me, and they do well for the brand, because usually the requirement is to follow the brand as well on their Instagram channel. So it works for them. And I think like if the prize is something that my community needs, then it's definitely a win-win for us.
So you mentioned the Instagram course. What kind of tidbits or tips or tactics do you provide people with? Do you have any, like small takeaways?
Sure. Well, I mentioned the Instagram course, and I wanted to backtrack a little bit on how that even came about. And so after launching the LA Girl and finding success with it, I realized that there's a million other people who want to do the same thing. And I'm sure you know them too.
Yep.
There's a lot of people, and I commend that, because we all have different messages. Like there's people that want to talk about health and just fitness, and there's people who just only want to talk about business. And so I actually started, through my job at Awesomeness, I started teaching workshops at YouTube for content creators. And I taught them either digital marketing, tactics and strategies. And I also started teaching monetizing. So once a YouTuber has like 100,000 followers, like how do they make that their full-time thing? How do they work with brands? And so I started teaching those workshops, and I realized, wow, like I love teaching. And because of my experience in the marketing and entertainment world and with the LA Girl, I really love teaching, and I need to find a way to do this. And that's how I founded my second company, Spark Society. And this was to teach millennial women how to build a community and their own brand online through digital marketing and social media. And so I started teaching workshops just in LA, and then I realized that there's a million people, and if I packaged it up into an online course, then there would be people from all over the world that can use it. I still love live learning, live teaching at the workshop, at the event that you were at the other day. I love seeing people, write down their brand study, do competitive analysis, and think about who's their audience and do all those things. So I love the workshop component of that business. And then the Instagram course came up because I wanted to create a way for other people to do it without having to be in LA. So the Instagram course goes through like a one-on-one, because I can't assume assume everybody knows what to do on Instagram. So it goes through all the app features. It goes through what a DM is and what an Instagram story is. Because there are a lot of people out there that still need that.
There are people that I actually taught somebody who is, I won't give their name, but there's somebody who's pretty big, even by follower numbers, who had never posted an Instagram story. And that was in July.
Right. So there's still a need for Instagram 101, which I'm going to be teaching another workshop on next year. But this Instagram course goes through 101, and then it goes through branding on Instagram, content on Instagram, creating a content calendar on Instagram specifically, how to create your own images, and also monetizing on Instagram, and marketing. So like pretty much everything you need to know to start monetizing on Instagram.
So how far out do you actually plan your content then?
Depends if it's a good day or not. Just kidding. So for the LA Girl, I look at things about a year out, know kind of the themes every quarter, know things in months in advance. So that, because I do have writers now for LA Girl, and so I do I sign things to writers, and some of the events I can't go to, so I send them, which is part of the fun. I'm sending girls out to do restaurant reviews and spa reviews, and they're like, "Why don't you want to do this?" And I'm like, "Well, because there are also other things." So I try at least a month in advance, a quarter if it's a good quarter.
Do you still touch all the pieces of content? Do you still make sure? Do you approve everything?
I still do most of the time. When I'm at a live event, like the live event we were at, I had someone doing my stories, and obviously that was in real time, so I didn't do that. And I feel like it's fine. It's raw, right? That's the whole appeal of the stories. But the blog, I still edit. Maybe in the future I'll have an editor working with the writers, but all in time. I also don't want to be like growing and hiring people really fast, because I've found that that's how a lot of businesses fail, is because they think they're growing so fast they can hire 1 million people. But I'm very, very aware of that. And, since this is, my baby, I want to make sure that I bring on people who are long-term and are talented and know the vision and believe in the vision.
So how many people work with you, and do they have any kind of say over Instagram or posting on Facebook? And I want to hear how you decide what goes where and how often it goes to all of the other platforms.
Right. So I have maybe 5 or 6 people part-time freelance. I don't have anyone full-time right now. I just brought on a business partner for sales and marketing, so that she can help me on that, just because, again, there's just so much between the LA Girl, Spark Society, and Gwen Lane. There's just a lot of moving parts. And if you want to be a great entrepreneur, you should know that you can't do it all yourself. And then delegation is key. And that I have to, even me who wants to be involved in everything, I need to know that if I want to grow, like what they say is 80% is good enough, right? If someone can do something 80% as well as you should let them do that. And so sometimes I'm on Facebook scrolling and I'm like, what? Who did this? But like I shouldn't be, right? Because I should be focused on the growth and the development of the business.
So we're going to talk about monetization.
Sure.
I know that's something that pretty much everybody who showed up to your event probably really wanted to know. First off, people try to monetize too early. I don't know if you have that same opinion. I know I have strong opinions on that. But I also think something that people don't realize is that there are other ways to monetize aside from a brand either sending you free stuff or paying you for a big brand deal. Can you talk a little bit about monetizing?
Sure. So when I first started out, I actually had Google Ads, and it was AdSense. And because there was not a lot of traffic on my blog, it was kind of like not worth it to get $2 a month if I was going to have a bunch of ads, like, on the homepage, on the sidebar, and the article post. So I took them out because I was like, it's not worth it for the little amount of money. I feel like it's good for people, for AdSense, for people who have a lot of visitors. So I took that out, and I was like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. And then I started getting brand sponsorships. So that was one. And then also affiliate links is definitely something that I've done a few of. I think I need to concentrate on that a little more moving forward because I am getting a lot more people. And with the blog posts and creating customized recommendations, I feel like that's something that my blog can definitely benefit from.
Do you have any tips on learning affiliate marketing? Because I think that's something that people should know about, but don't know about, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Sephora, whatever your genre is. How you even start learning about it? Would you just suggest people Google it?
So there is a lot of free information online if you just put in affiliate marketing. I am a big proponent of courses because I do have my own course, and as someone that loves to learn, I took the course Making Sense of Sense. She's an affiliate marketer. I think her name is Michelle Schroeder, and if you just type in Making Sense of Sense, that's her. She's a personal finance blogger, and she has a course on that, and I highly recommend it. I'm still inside of it, doing the course, but her tips have been great so far, and it's something that I'm going to apply. And I was telling Brittany that the next 2 months, that's kind of going to be one of my focus on the LA Girl.
So I don't mean to make you give away all your secrets, but I want to talk about paid ads.
Sure.
So what kind of ads are you running and on which platforms?
Sure. So on Facebook is definitely, I feel like, the biggest bang for your buck. I have been running them for customer acquisition on Facebook for the LA Girl page.
Okay.
So that one I do boost posts when I have an article or a video. I boost it because it's just the way people are going to see my video, because I'm sure Facebook doesn't show it to everybody. But if you can get really good numbers, just like that one I said about the hike video, I was getting less than 1 cent per view. So it's like, for me, that's a no-brainer. I took the time to create the video content and edit it, and so might as well make sure that people see it. And it had 800,000 views, and I think 60% organic, 40% paid.
Wow.
So it was a really good video. And so once like people are engaging, that's when I say put the money down, or I create hero content and I see like what are my big pushes for the year. If it's once a quarter, once a month, and I make sure I put money in the budget for that. If I have events, then I also put money behind that too, so that people can see that those are coming up. For the Spark Summit, I put in maybe $100 of paid ads, but we were able to sell out, and we sold over 50 people came to the event. So
it's amazing. Do you boost posts on Instagram at all?
I do. I did it for the event, and then I did it when I'm promoting a course. One thing that I've heard from, I'm not sure who, but someone in online marketing said, like, don't boost or advertise if you can't get your money back. So I don't really like boosting for just, blog content.
Awareness.
Yeah, for brand awareness as much. But if like you're selling something, a product like Instagram course, or I have my clothing line now, if I want to boost posts to that, then it makes sense because I'm trying to make my money back. So there's a return, because otherwise it's just for eyeballs, which is good too. But you just have to, I guess, create a balance on that so that you're not just throwing your money out there.
Have growth tactics changed at all for you, or have they stayed pretty steady?
I think they change all the time, just because things change all the time on the platforms. And that's why in my Instagram course, I also tell people that Instagram is not the be-all, end-all of everything. They could change anything whenever they want. They could show your stuff to 0 people if they want to. I know people getting their Facebook business pages and personal pages banned because they do. So, yeah, they either put out an ad, or I think they were doing promotions on their personal page, so they would get banned. And I'm like, well, Facebook is the god on that, and they can do whatever they want. And so I always try to make sure I redirect back to my own property, because on my blog I could choose what to put on there. I can choose who sees what, and I have more control over it.
So then how essential has an email newsletter been for you?
I think that it's still really important. I know a lot of online marketing gurus that I learn from, that's the number one thing on their list. To join the LA Girl Society, you have to sign up for the newsletter. And that's where I put in the giveaway every week, so that I know that they're either engaged with it or in it if they want to be part of the giveaways. I feel like it's what I call the modern Rolodex, and that you own the contacts, and so even if you get banned from Facebook. I hope not, because that would be horrific and tragic. You can still use email to get in contact with everyone. And I know that the most successful online marketers, like I'm sure Marie Forleo and Gary Vee's list, are in the top 10 millions. So I'm still building that. Society, it's going to be a really big thing, especially with online courses and group programs. So it's definitely a priority.
So I know you have a private Facebook group. I've been hot on the private Facebook group thing for community building, especially for personalities and for people like you who are building community. How have you seen it kind of help the LA girl and kind of change your community, if at all?
Oh, I think it's a game changer for everyone. So it's a really good tip that I also teach students. So for the LA Girl Society, it's become kind of a really cool place. People post general stuff like jobs or apartments for rent, or if they're looking for an apartment. But we do cute stuff too. Like we share memes and videos, and I make sure that I have a lot of prompts in there for engagement. So whether that's like who's your man crush Monday, and we all put like gifs of like Chris Helmsworth and all the Helmsworth and like all the Ryans and all of them. So it's like become like a huge girl gang. And I always get like, people on Facebook on the public pages, personal pages saying like, I wish I had my Sex in the City girls. Like it's become like that kind of vibe. So I think that it's helped a lot. For Spark Society, I feel like it's a little harder because there's so many business type groups that people are just members of all of them. Sometimes when I prove them in, they're like members of 500 groups. So like, how can you be truly active unless they're just like they promote and leave, right? They like drop and leave, and they just drop their links there for promotion. So I think it's a little harder on that.
So do you have a cap on growth that you'd probably put on the Facebook group? Because I have noticed, so I've been a part of a few, actually it's very beneficial Facebook groups, and I've noticed a few groups ended up losing their benefit when they hit a certain number. And again, like I think it probably depends on the group, and I have certain numbers in mind, but do you have any that you'd cap at?
No, not at the moment. I think my groups are still growing because I just started them like a couple months ago. So they're still growing. There's still room. There are a lot of creepers, I call them, that just hang out and don't do anything. Lurkers, exactly. But I have seen a trend of the bigger groups in the 20Ks that have been closing just because like they don't have enough bandwidth to police them, and they have admins, like trying to police everything. Right now, I'm just like seeing it as a benefit, but if it does become a liability, then it will be something I'll think about if I want to continue it or not.
Just out of curiosity, who takes your photos?
It really depends, right? So if I'm with my husband, it's him.
Instagram
husband. If I'm with a friend, then it's my friend. I have a lot of photographer friends that we do shoots on a normal basis, and that could be once a quarter. And so I, stockpile that up for the quarter. So it's like, doesn't mean you see a photo, I'm there. It's just not how it is anymore. That's what stories are for.
Yeah.
And then there have been times where I'm at an event by myself and nobody I know is there, and I ask a stranger. And what I do is I tell them to take 50 or 10. I'm just kidding. I just keep taking, please, as I'm like doing poses. And then hopefully one will fit, and it's just a luck thing. So.
Do you have specific poses that work for you?
I have one side of the face that I like better than the other.
Every girl has one side of the face they like. Better.
I'm the left side, so when it's a group photo, I stand on that side to make sure that it's getting my good side. But like when in the beginning, like don't be picky, like bring a selfie stick with you. I know a lot of travel bloggers that bring tripods with them, and they just have.
You have to do it.
Yeah, they just have a clicker, a buzzer, and then you just go.
Did you trademark the LA Girl?
No, I have not yet, but I will.
You're going to?
My sister's actually a lawyer, and so she is getting on me with all of that. So I'm going to trademark the LA Girl, and I have to trademark the LA Girl logo for the clothing line.
Yeah, the lawyer in me was like, wait, did she trademark this? So I had to ask you.
I'm going to say trademark pending.
So you also sell merch on your site, and you do e-com. I mean, you do it all. How did that end up coming about that you were like, okay, I want to sell a product? How did you develop the product? And what have been your strategies for building e-com out on your site?
Product has always been in the vision, mainly because, as you know, I had an e-commerce background selling Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, if everyone was into anime. So e-commerce was always a thing because I was thinking about my business as a whole, and advertising and selling to brands is kind of what I call B2B, so B2B business. And so what was I selling to my customers? Pretty much nothing, right? I wasn't giving them any opportunity to put money down. That's when the LA Girl Society came up. So right now it's free, but I will be launching a VIP membership on that soon, just because it's not sustainable to do events for free. It takes a lot of time. That actually takes the most time out of all of the things, is to, talk to restaurants and vendors and venues and put these events together. And then the product kind of just stemmed along that. If, you want to, show your LA pride. And I have t-shirts that say, tank tops that say LA Girl. And then I also have some that say neighborhood. So I grew up in Echo Park. So I have an Echo Park one, Malibu. I know some friends from Culver City was like, where's our shirt? And I have area code one. So yeah, it's more like LA City Pride. I think it's really fun. I have some guys that were like, are you going to make guy shirts? So I think it's just like an added bonus. It's not necessarily the focus, and I feel like I want to have a good revenue stream balance and just not expect money from advertising and brands, but also opening up the opportunities for B2C business.
So I want you to talk to me a little bit about what Spark Society is doing, what you're hoping, it will build out to be. And then are you throwing events for both Spark Society and LA Girl?
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So I realized when I was teaching that there's another demo that I would like to serve, and that is millennial women entrepreneurs. And I realized when I would send newsletters out and events to the LA girls, a lot of them were not responsive. And why is that? Because not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. And I respect that, because we all can't be entrepreneurs. I mean, there has to be people working for entrepreneurs, or else we can't, fulfill our visions. And that's totally okay.
And some people really get a lot of satisfaction out of helping other people fulfill their visions.
Yes. Totally. And a lot of people don't have the risk aversion to entrepreneurship. No. I have friends that are like, I could never. I need that money in my bank account every 2 weeks. Yeah, you
need the knowledge that the benefits will be there.
Yes, exactly. And that's fine. It's just not everyone was wired that way. And I feel like that's okay. And so I felt that I needed to serve them in a different way. And that's when I started Spark Society. Spark was something that I've always been drawn to, because I feel like everything sparks from an idea. I like to spark inspiration. So Spark was kind of my word. Obviously, it was taken in a lot of domains. So I was looking for other words to go with it. And because I had the LA Girl Society, I said, okay, Spark Society will be the community, because community first in all my businesses. And then Spark Summit was the first conference kind of event that I did, and we're hoping to do that every year. And then I want to do more workshops, in-person workshops in LA, and then more courses that people outside of LA can take, and that can evolve into more meetups, networking. It's a whole thing.
So let's talk about the jewelry line then. So you started making it back in 2008 after you were traveling in Europe?
Yes.
So how did you learn how to make the jewelry, and then when did you decide to start putting it online? Because did you ever take a break from it and then start up again?
Yes and yes. So in 2008, when I was traveling in Europe, I was repairing some jewelry, and I realized, oh my God, I could put this all together myself. So I would source different materials at flea markets and vintage shops in Europe, and I would start selling it. And I was like, oh my God, I really love doing this. I've always been creative. I used to do painting, drawing, sketching, writing. So it was just something that, whether or not it was a full-time business or was going to make me money, it was just something I loved to do. It was a hobby, and it was a hobby that made money. And I didn't put pressure on myself to have to make a full-time living out of it. And I think that's why I love it so much. And so when I came back and I went back to corporate, I took a break because I couldn't do everything anymore. And especially with the LA Girl and my course, I knew that I was going to always go back to it. I figured, when I staff up a little bit, maybe grow my team, maybe I'll have a few hours a week to start. And so I wanted to catch the holiday season this year, and I had like maybe a week. And so I put a collection together and handmade all the jewelry that you saw. And yeah, it's fun for me. I call it inspirational jewelry because I use natural gemstones and I put in a spirituality factor into it. So if you buy the amethyst one, I tell you what that gemstone does. And if you want clarity, I recommend the clear quartz necklaces. And if you want love, get some rose quartz.
I'm going to need to ask you about all that stuff after.
Yes.
I love that stuff, but I need somebody to tell me what all the gems mean.
Exactly.
So 10% goes to charity. How did you decide that percentage? How did you decide you wanted to give back to charity, and how do you choose the charities?
Sure. So contribution is one of my core values. I feel that if I'm not giving back in some way, I am not fulfilled. And giving back to me has been teaching other women, giving them a platform to be friends with other women. And then the charity aspect was just something that has always been a part of me. I love volunteering. I love giving back. I would volunteer a lot at dog rescues. I volunteer for kids organizations. And so I wanted to create a way for my business to do that. And it actually fuels me to be more successful, because the more successful I am, the more successful that charity or nonprofit could be. And the thing that they need the most is money and financing. And so I felt like that's the biggest way I could contribute and give back through my business.
So how are you getting the word out there about the jewelry? Are you influencer marketing? You're promoting a million things at once. They're all interconnected, but the time division must be difficult.
So I promoted on the LA Girl. So the LA Girl has a shop which has my clothing and jewelry, and I'm eventually going to have other LA Girl vendors on there. So think of it as like an LA Etsy type of place, because I also want to give makers a platform. And sometimes it's really hard. Well, let's not say sometimes. It's really hard to get people to your shop, right?
Yes.
Everybody. This is everybody. Unless you have lots of paid advertising, unless you're on the front page of Google, unless you're on Amazon, it's really tough. And so the fact that I already have a built-in audience and I'm creating content every day, it would, benefit other makers to be on it as a vendor in my shop. And so I'm promoting it that way. It has its own Instagram. It has its own Facebook. I am using influencer marketing for both. And yeah, it's just a mix of everything. And like anything, it's just trying it out and seeing what works. And these are baby businesses, what I call it. I just launched them literally a month ago. And so I don't have big expectations for them. I always knew the LA Girl was going to take a couple years. And I think this will too. And it will just grow and become an extension of the LA Girl now.
So speaking about influence, what do you think the secret to influence is?
I think the secret to influence is gaining trust of your audience. And whether that's an audience of 1, 5, 10, 10,000, I don't think that number matters. I think it just means that you can make an impact in their lives and you can actually convince them to try something. And it could be something that they don't like or they don't buy, but they'll at least be intrigued and interested because it's coming from you.
So who do you find influential, whether it's in the social digital space or outside? Who are people that you look to?
Oh my God, there's just so many, just because I love learning so much. So one of my biggest mentors that I actually bought a course from, and I'm going to his live conference this week in Laguna, is James Wedmore. Oh. He's a really cool person that I look up to. I'm really excited to meet him in person. Amy Porterfield is also going to be there. I feel like they're all friends.
Yeah, they are all friends.
They're all friends. So
I'll tell you right now.
That group, I would love to be. I want to wake up on one day and be like, I'm in their group, and there's that vision. And big fan of Tony Robbins, big fan of Gary Vee. And And then I'm a big fan of a lot of women in LA who are in my groups, and they're there and they're supportive, and they come. I have some people that come to every event, and it's not just because, they want to hang out, but it's because they believe in me and they believe in my vision. And I feel like that speaks volumes, and that what keeps me going.
Where can people find all of your great content and all of the projects you're working on?
I was just talking to my husband about this, that we need like an aggregate page because right now if you go to gwenlane.com, that's my jewelry line. If you go to the lagirl.com, that's the LA Girl. And if you go to the sparksociety.org, that's Spark Society. But I'll probably create a site that's just like, here you go. Here are all my companies, and you can find out everything there. So thank you so much for having me, Brittany.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Beyond Influential. If you found value in this week's episode, please rate and subscribe on iTunes. I'd love to know who you find influential. You can let me know on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Brittany Crystal, Krystle, or visit my website, brittanycrystal.com.
Beyond Influential.